A brutal defeat of Antifa in Portland. The left is being beaten, pushed back, and crushed on all fronts. A year ago, I couldn't have dreamed of saying these words. A year ago, my wife and I were wondering if America would last through our lifetime or if we needed to prepare to escape. It's only been a year, but what a year.
It's happening in so many ways we could never have imagined. From the smoldering ruins of the Antifa stronghold in Portland to the depleted treasuries of Democrat-linked NGOs around the world, the American left is experiencing a systematic destruction unlike anything seen in modern political history.
Nothing like this has happened in the recent past. It took 40 million deaths and the efforts of half of humanity to overthrow the Hitler regime. In Cuba, there was war and bloodshed, and Iran became Islamist in 1979. There was a whole revolution there, too. Blood, blood, blood. The October Revolution, not to mention Russia, killing, brutality, famine, civil war. Nothing like that happened in America. And the fact that the leftists are trying this, it's not even close to what they would like to do. It's just that they're up against an opponent they can't handle.
We're watching the political left in its death throes. Masked militants who have terrorized American cities with impunity for years are now facing final and decisive retribution. As many of you know, since early June, Antifa militants have besieged the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Office in Portland, using road signs as battering rams, throwing explosives, burning American flags, and even rolling out a guillotine. Their helpless, radical left, crazy governor like Baghdad Bob stood in front of the cameras claiming these were just peaceful protests, nothing more. Well, this week, all of that came to an end.
You understand that this right here, arrests, overall aggression, the actions of law enforcement agencies have never happened in democratic states and cities. Leftists who are equipped just as well as the military, really. They threw stones, threw Molotov cocktails, burned tires, sometimes cars, and then dispersed. After receiving their reward and bonuses, I think they were taken home, each given dinner with a bottle of beer or Coca-Cola, and then suddenly this happened.
After President Trump's order designating Antifa as a terrorist organization, federal agents armed with military equipment turned into full-fledged counter-terrorism forces. The response was swift and devastating. Among the many arrests, numerous federal charges were brought against these attackers. Information is reportedly coming from the Department of Homeland Security. What do you have, Piotr? The first charge of domestic terrorism has been filed, but this is not yet confirmed. What
else has changed before Antifa was declared a terrorist organization? Even if they were arrested, they were released immediately. Very well-paid lawyers were already waiting for them at the police stations, and the criminals were released even without bail, on their word of honor that in 4 months, 7 days, 13 hours, or 3 years, 5 months, 4 hours, and so on, they would come to court. Well, if anyone showed up, it wasn't them, but their lawyers. They got off because of the war, settling everything with judges who sympathized with leftist views. The war. But now Antifa. Terrorists, which means not just a slap on the wrist, but up to 30 years in prison. There's a difference, right? Like getting a pat on the butt or getting 30 years in prison. That's it. That's not what the brave Antifa members signed up for. They signed up for something completely different. They still haven't realized how much everything has actually changed. This
order triggered a cascade of federal powers that systematically destroy the already limited operational capability. The order specifically targets anyone claiming to act on behalf of Antifa and directs federal agencies to investigate violations and to eliminate all illegal operations, including their sources of funding, their banks. Even their landlords can be held accountable if it is determined that they are providing them with significant assistance. Now, the impact of this order was immediate and harsh. Agents of the Department of Homeland Security have arrested dozens of extremists linked to Antifa in just the last 48 hours who were attacking law enforcement and inciting violent riots. And FBI Director Kash Patel has repeatedly warned that those who target law enforcement will be imprisoned for a long time. This is
a very long time, maybe 10, 20, and in some cases even 30 years. And these mercenaries who knew that, well, you might spend a month or two in prison, at worst, it's not the first time for you, suddenly heard from the prosecutors that their life might be over. That's where it ended. Youth, at the very least, for sure. The next couple of decades will be taken out of their lives. This is, of course, a shock, ladies and gentlemen.
The suppression of Antifa is just one part of the three-pronged offensive that the Trump administration is launching against the American left. Overall, we are witnessing the systematic destruction of the entire ideological infrastructure which took decades to build. But it took only a few months to destroy it during the second term of the offensive. The chaotic scenes we've been witnessing in Portland in recent days are not just random arrests. These are the death throes of a coordinated left-wing infrastructure that is finally facing the full force of federal authority during Trump's second term. Every arrest, every federal charge, every tactical deployment is a strategic move in Trump's broader war against the forces that have terrorized American cities for many years. And I'll show you how Trump is in the process of completely dismantling the American left for good.
I'll be very glad if Dr. Steve Turley is right. Let's listen to him and then we'll discuss it.
What's happening? Here. The point is that Trump's destruction of the American left is happening on three interconnected fronts, each aimed at eliminating a different pillar of leftist power. The first front started right away on his first day as president when Trump used the Department of Justice to target the Democratic Party's finances and sought to eliminate United States Agency for International Development. Massive cuts to foreign aid programs, which served as a cover for the interests of democratic groups. That's right, you remember that. That's the real reason why the traditional media, that's why they're going out of their way with these absurd statements. Millions of people around the world will die because we cut United States Agency for International Development. Yes, of course, they hide behind the facade of human suffering like a human shield to protect their fund that provided unlimited taxpayer dollars fueling their political power. For example, just the aid bill worth $3.2 billion, which by itself financed radical left-wing priorities, including climate change initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer activities, and other projects that are completely contrary to American interests and have nothing to do with the program's original stated purpose. By eliminating these programs, Trump cut off an important source of funding that allowed NGOs connected to the Democrats and international organizations of the Democratic Party itself to act as an extension of the party's global agenda. Now, this move dealt them a blow, but it wasn't a fatal wound. Because you still have an extensive ultra-left interconnected infrastructure that received hundreds of millions of dollars every year from ultra-left anti-American billionaires. That includes the second front we've been watching recently. Trump is threatening to use Parik's charges against Soros, targeting the operational infrastructure of far-left groups through unprecedented financial investigations and prosecutions by Parik. It's time. These arrests and terrorist confessions are targeting the ultra-left groups themselves and their members. Thus, Trump on this second front is targeting the money and members of this broad ultra-left network across the country, if not everywhere. In fact, Trump's National Security Memorandum directs the FBI's National Joint Terrorism Task Force, the Department of Justice, the Department of the Treasury, and even the damn Internal Revenue Service itself to systematically dismantle what Trump calls radical left-wing terrorist networks. And the scale is just breathtaking. The Department of Justice has directed United States attorneys nationwide to investigate this matter involving George Soros's Open Society foundations. And the investigation includes possible charges ranging from material support, terrorism, arson, wire fraud, and of course the violations themselves. Rika, so you have the first front, which was and remains defunding the Democratic Party, cutting them off from our tax dollars.
One of the most outrageous aspects of what's happening was the funding for anti-American activities, invented during Obama's time at the expense of the American taxpayer. It was a brilliant move, in my opinion, and it took more than 20 years. The second coming of Trump, to develop and implement a strategy to fight this cancer grown by the Democrats in the body of the United States of America.
The second front is the dismantling of the finances and membership behind the far-left groups. And now the third front, which kind of ties all this together, includes an attack on the cultural and media apparatus that promotes leftist ideology in American institutions. So Trump's relentless attack on the traditional media was especially harsh and destructive for the Democrats. You know, he initiated several multi-billion-dollar lawsuits against the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, regarding their dishonest and blatantly deliberate misleading reporting. And ABC had to pay tens of millions. YouTube just paid $25 million for unfairly removing Trump from the platform, so Trump is crushing the media. Now, of course, he's being helped by the rise of the networked society, a completely new social order where we are all collectively connected in cyberspace through the internet. And that's why the information that traditional media once had a monopoly on is now completely decentralized. It has been radically democratized. So now we all have the same access to the same information as everyone in traditional media. Now we can fact-check them.
The lubrication has started. Of course, his purchase and turnaround of Twitter gave a boost to numerous bloggers who were previously kept everywhere in the United States shut down, punished, and cut off from funding. Now many of them have audiences in the millions, and they are not afraid that Facebook or Google will suddenly shut them down. Naturally, there are still underhanded tricks and nastiness going on, but these are behind-the-scenes schemes, not cutting bloggers off from their audiences.
Fraud, the machine of cultural propaganda, has collapsed, with the overwhelming majority of nations rejecting wokeism. Overall, Bud Lighting every major corporation that embraces this nonsense, the vocal left has officially lost control over American culture and their cultural institutions. That's why the amazing speech by our Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, the other day in front of those 700 generals was so devastating for many. In the traditional one, what? They now realize with horror that the Trump administration is completely destroying their control over every cultural institution in the country. Without that influence, without the fear of retribution from the traditional media, which used to have excessive influence over public opinion, without that, and without funding from United States Agency for International Development, and without billionaires and ultra-left networks, the entire American left is collapsing.
It's like drinking honey, as they say. But I think the left still has something left. They still have the strength to resist. And the battle is far, far, far from over. Oh, God.
Man, I could watch this all day.
Here's the reaction of the neighborhood residents to the fact that finally Antifa is being arrested and taken off the streets of Ragona. Is Trump's tactic working? Let's take a look.
Also want to show you the result of this, because this was the scene. Last night in Portland, you can see the crowd, and this is the crowd just 3 days ago. So you will clearly notice an obvious decrease in the size and number of people who are coming. It's not that there aren't any Antifa crazies at all, but the main point here, I think, is broader. The picture is that you're talking about a group of people who for several years, not months, but years, were allowed to riot and terrorize their city with impunity. As we've discussed, Portland police follow a policy of non-response. That's a real thing. They won't answer 911 calls, whether for noise complaints or real assaults or violence at that center. Immigration and customs enforcement, because their sanctuary city policy basically just protects the rioters. And we know this is a coordinated effort by local politicians and the state governor to protect Antifa. There's a reason they're allowed to act with such impunity, because in a way, they basically run the Democratic Party. That's right, Democratic politicians come out and make these vague statements like, why, we condemn violence, but they never actually condemn these people. Why? Because whether it's intimidating conservatives or causing civil unrest, ultimately Democrats understand that these are useful tools that can be used when they are destroyed. I
remember that during Trump's first term, they were used to create the impression in the country that under Trump there were fires, riots, and police killings. But Trump 47, yes, the second term. He came first of all with a strategy, and secondly with a team. With a team that is capable of carrying out this strategy. But desperately, we were fortunate that after Trump at 45, there was a break with Biden, giving Trump time to prepare. What's striking is how the Democrats in politics and the press turned out to be not ready for the new Trump, not capable. It's already been, 8 months, and they haven't even been able to figure out, as they say, where the wind is blowing from. They can't adapt. They have to say that on the streets of Portland, for example, and in other cities with Democratic mayors, there's not much crime. That everything is actually calm there. People look at this and then they see what's happening. Some watch on television, others from their window, then return to watching television. And it's like they see the Democrats telling them that none of what they just saw is real. No, and that's it. About 15 years ago, I wrote a story called In Search of Hugh. I wrote it in English, then it was translated into Russian. And one chapter there is dedicated precisely to this phenomenon. That is something happening, action, running, chasing, etc. A novella is still about love, about a fight, and so on. But now let me explain. So, in my novella, people are being persuaded not to watch the sunset over the ocean, but to watch a recording of the sunset over the ocean on television. In my novella, nearly everyone watches television. Thank God America is divided. Some believe the television, but some still trust their own eyes. But first, here is footage from the fighting in Portland. Yes, this is Oregon, United States of America. This is not Venezuela, this is not Mexico, this is not China, this is not Brazil. Although it looks a bit strange for American streets, you
could see these protesters when they arrived. By the way, it's very telling. Waving Mexican flags, an upside-down American flag, a Palestinian flag, and that's a Lebanese flag, right? Jordan, one of these countries, that's the Egyptian flag, the Native American flag. So you'll notice every foreign flag except the United States, which honestly is fitting because these people should be seen as foreign extremists. I mean, even if they're locals. The ideology is fundamentally anti-American. It's communist. Well,
and now, looking at the extremists, this is what the Democrats leading us into darkness are telling us. For example, the governor of Oregon, Tina Kotek, I think it's Kotek.
First of all, I want people to know that Portland, Oregon is a beautiful, vibrant, successful city. We are not a war zone. I was there all weekend. People were walking around, shopping, going to restaurants, to soccer games, to shows. Portland is a wonderful place. We're not under siege, and there's no uprising here. When the president says military troops shouldn't be sent to my state...
Yeah, you're not under siege, and there's no uprising here. Of course, at the same time, there is openness, open coordination with the Portland police and the local government. And Antifa, not to respond to the riots, Antifa...
It's some fascinating horror, like in Wonderland. We don't have riots. And what's this? What? And this right here, where is it? Well, doesn't it remind you of Javanetsky? Yeah, remember, the one with the towel, yeah? What's this? Where, what, where? On the shoulder? On which shoulder? But for Javanetsky, it was just a joke. Well, of course, it reflected real life, but it was a joke. A joke. Here, governors, senators, former presidents, and corrupt journalists are trying to convince us that setting a building on fire is a peaceful demonstration. And by the way, they're surprised and outraged when we don't believe them.
This has been going on for several months now. Tina, who has armed security around the clock, says she can take her wife out on a date and it's no problem.
Portland is not destroyed by war. There is no uprising, no threat to national security, and no need for military troops. I decided to go out on the streets myself, right here in downtown Portland. I'm standing just a few blocks from the waterfront with a view of the beautiful Willamette River and Portland City Hall, the federal courthouse, and dozens of shops and restaurants in the downtown area.
I can show you a beautiful beach in Haiti and say, see, Haiti is completely safe. Murders have doubled in the past 4 years. The number of aggravated assaults has increased, and arson cases have also gone up. Tina doesn't control Portland. Look at this scene. Does it look like a safe place to grab a bite? Or have you just lost your appetite? Another Democrat says maybe skip dinner.
Why don't you take a walk with your girlfriend through our parks if...
This is the most beautiful park in Portland. Forget about security. Trump needs to send gardeners. Not the best place for a picnic. You could get pricked by a syringe, like...
Wow, everyone's coming at me because of this crazy weight. Stop being a loser just because you're Greek. You literally need to assemble God to censor me.
It's like how cable news network reported the crime wave. Remember?
We had a great dinner in New York tonight, and people came up to us saying, "Thank you, I watch you every night. I can't believe it." They really did a double take when they saw us not on a television screen. But New York wasn't, a hellish place, right?
I mean, that guy ran by with a machete.
Who was trying to get... No, of course not. No dinners, no picnics in the park. Maybe we'll have to eat at home. But the Taco Bell delivery guy will be late because he made a stop to flip off immigration and customs enforcement.
By the way, don't forget to subscribe and click the famous bell. Then we can meet every day. By the way, on Sundays at 10 a.m. Well, that's Los Angeles time. In New York, it's 1 p.m. and it's 2000 in Jerusalem and Kiev. I'm analyzing the situation, let's say, on a deeper level. If you're interested, come and listen sometime. We make announcements about this on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can always find out where and when it's happening and so on. Well, and for sponsors, our sponsors on Thursday also at 10 a.m. On the west coast of the United States, I start having meetings with sponsors on Thursdays. At these meetings, we will discuss topics that, so to speak, interest the audience, you, ways of presenting material and criticism, if there is any. Well, actually, I welcome it because with some criticism you think, well, okay, maybe that's true, but with some you want to argue, and that's how it turns out, and you try to correct it. It's very easy to become a sponsor to take part in all of this. There's a link in the description, and it's $4 a month, gentlemen, or more. By the way, about half actually give more. Here you go. Why do we need this? I'm not going to run away to Mexico, not with this money. We spend much more on various technical things than we receive, and more than the channel's technical needs. Okay, thank you to everyone who listened. See you on the air.